Now let us talk about the assemblies. Now we have seen who were the Cholas, who were the Pandyas, who were the Cheras, right? Now let us talk about the Sangam of all these three powers. Okay, so the major or the general context of this topic is the assembly, the Sangam, right? So what is the Sangam? The confluence of two or more powers, or one or two or more powers. Okay, so here the assemblies were known as Mucham. Okay, the assemblies were known as Mucham. Now, why am I reciting these words, keywords? Because these are being completely asked in UPSC preliminary examination. So you should not get confused during that time or that period. That is why just have a look, take a note about these terms, important terms and the concepts, so that you would not be getting confused again. Okay, so this is meant by the assemblies. So there were major three assemblies. The first assembly and the third assembly was being conducted in Madurai, but the second assembly, okay, was conducted in Kapatapuram. Okay, Kapatapuram. Okay, so here many of the kings were having the debates and the discussion. Poets were present, priestly class were present, common citizens were present during these assemblies. Okay, so in the first assembly, which was held in Madurai, okay, which was presided by the Agastya. Okay, now the simple word is Agastya, but if you need to know the literary word, so that is Agattiyar. In the Tamil literature, they are known as the Agattiyar, but whenever you need to speak in general, they are known as Agastya. Okay, so they had no surviving works according to the present history now, but it's not that they didn't took any of the literature from all this assembly. They took, but they have not been survived up till the date. So if at present asked about the first assembly which was held in Madurai, at present we don't have any of the literary sources. Okay, after the first assembly, the Sangam period started to develop more literature with respect to the Sangam assemblies, and that is why we'll see that the resources started to be getting generated only after the second assemblies. Okay, so the most important literary source was done by Tolkappiyam. Okay, Tolkappiyam. So this Tolkappiyam had written the Tolkappiyam. Okay, the only surviving text, and that is why it is known as a grand text which tells the original incidences happened during the Sangam literature. So if you are being asked about the literature present of the Sangam age, so the first major literature is the Tolkappiyam, which is the grand and the mother literature. Okay, and after this Tolkappiyam, we'll find many of the literatures. But which is the mother literature? It is Tolkappiyam by Tolkappiyar. Okay, so Tolkappiyar wrote the Tolkappiyam, which is presently the surviving literature of the Sangam literature. After that, in the third assembly, which was again conducted in the Madurai region or the Madurai city, okay, they were presided by the Nakirar. Okay, so there were many scholars in the third. In fact, the participation of the scholars was much more in the third assembly. Okay, why? Because we'll see the intellectuals also, the traders also, the agriculturalists also would be taking part in this third assembly. Okay, and here many of the literary sources would be getting evolved. Okay, so in third assembly we had Ettuthokai. Okay, that is eight anthologies, eight type ka text. Okay, eight type ka poems, which reflects the different regions of the Sangam period. Okay, and the Pattupattu, that is 10 ideals. So they would be telling us the stories about the different regions. They would be telling about the habitat of the different region, livelihood of the different people and different region. So let us study them in the depth. So these were the emblems. Okay, so this fish with respect to the Pandyas. Okay, tiger with respect to the Cholas. Okay, and the bow and arrow with respect to Cheras. Okay, so these were the Sangam of the three kingdoms or the three dynasties. Okay, so the Sangam literature, okay, is the primary literature which tells us about the South Indian context. Okay, so here first the grand text which we just talked about was the Tolkappiyam. Okay, it was Tolkappiyam, which was formed in the second assembly. Okay, so this is the earliest Sangam text. Basically, it talks upon the grammar values, okay, and the linguistic values. So this is the major feature of this text. After this, there are 8 anthologies, or also known as Ittugai. Okay, Ittu means 8. Okay, Ittugai. So here it is the collection of 8 different works, including Ayangarunau, Puranaru. Okay, after that Kuruntogai, depicting love, warfare, politics, and morality. So initially also I told you that there were two kinds of poems that were being evolved during the Sangam period. So first kind of poem was based on love, okay, and second kind of poems were based on warfare activities. Okay, so in the whole Sangam text you will find two kinds of poems and two kinds of literatures. Okay, then the Pattupattu, that is the 10 long poems. Pattupattu, 10 long poems detailing the Tamil king lives and achievements. So it would be completely the second kind of text. Okay, now the Pathinikilamku, okay, which would be talking about the ethics, morality, values. So this would be depicting the first kind of poem. After that, the epic literature. Here, the story of the Kovalan and the Kannagi, the same love story which I just now recited. The Kovalan was the official in the Sangam period, and the Kannagi was his first wife, okay, from the Puhar city. Okay, and this provides the insights into the Sangam society. Now, how he married his lover, okay, and how he migrated towards the Madurai city. Why did he migrated? Okay, how was his life after the migration towards the Madurai city? What was the life of Kannagi after her husband left her alone in the Puhar city? Okay, but still when she came to know that her husband was not well treated by the people, by the society in the Madurai, okay, she again takes the stand for her husband, and this reflects the best example in the society ki how should be the wife. Okay, so it talks about the moral responsibilities of the wife which were putted in the society on the women's. Okay, so here the story tells us everything about the Kovalan and Kannagi story of livelihood. Okay, after that, the Manika Megalai. Okay, so this the story of Manika Megalai, a Buddhist nun, highlights the religious and the cultural aspects. Okay, so here the Buddhist evidence is also present. So here you can take into consideration that there were many of the Buddhist texts talking about the Sangam period. In fact, Sangam literature were also talking about the Buddhism. Okay, the Buddhism present in the South India, not in North India. Okay, so this was completely different. Here the Buddhist Buddhist ideals and the sculptures were visited or worshipped in a different style, in a different way as compared to the North India. Okay, so Hinayana and Mahayana, all both kinds we had discussed in the previous sessions. Okay, after this, when you need to talk about how Tolkappiyam, now what is Tolkappiyam? The grand text of the Sangam literature. Okay, so the Tolkappiyam, which was created after the second assembly, it talks about the different regions. Okay, so what is the livelihood of different area? Okay, how the society inhabits in the different regions. So it talks about the hilly tracts, it talks about the pastoral region. Okay, it talks about the agricultural society, it talks about the coastal region, it also talks about the desert. Okay, so just try to remind these names. Now the hilly tracts are known as Kurunji, pastoral Mulai, agriculture Murudam, and coastal Nedal, desert Palai. Okay, so here the different deities were worshipped depending upon the different region. For example, if you are living in agricultural society, you are going to worship Indra god. Okay, so here the chief deity was Indra. Okay, after that, if you are having the pastoral occupation, you are going to worship Lord Vishnu, okay, or the Lord Mayon. Okay, after that, if you are living in the hilly tracts, you are going to worship the Lord Murugan. In fact, in today's date also, Lord Murugan is quite famous. They have their own festivals, they have their own occupation, kind of occupation, tribal occupation or whatever it is. They also have their own food culture, okay, in the hilly tracts. After that, in desert, they used to visit the Koravai. Okay, so here, depending upon the geographical location, depending upon the religious values, they had their own primary different activities too. So for example, in the hilly tracts, so there would be majorly pastoral and shifting culture. And when there is a pastoral and shifting culture in hilly tracts, you will see that the hunting is also more, right? So here the hunting and honey collection is more. In fact, in today's date also, this hilly regions exports more amount of honey in different countries. Okay, so this was followed since ancient times. Okay, after that, in the pastoral region, the cattle herding and the dairy farming was major occupation. After this, in the agricultural sector, farming and cultivation was being followed. Okay, the key inhabitants were the Ayar and the Udayar. After that, in the coastal region, that is the fishing and the salt production was the majorly focused, and the inhabitants were called as Ulavar and Velalar. After that, in the desert region, as there were no natural resources nor finished resources, you will find that the looting and raiding is majorly followed in such areas. Okay, so here they were called as a Pattavar and Valayar. Okay, so major of the minorities were being present in these areas, in Palai areas. Okay, so today also, if you go in South India, you will see that minorities would be present in such Palai regions. Okay, in fact, the villages are also given the name, extended name of Palai. Okay,